Welcome. You listen to the Just Thinking Out Loud podcast with yours truly, Vincent Kambona. So follow me here as we talk about our country, Kenya. It's almost a century since we were declared an independent republic. But for some reason, we're still going through the same hardships that our ancestors went through, right? Somebody might argue, actually, things are much more worse now. Somebody might say our parents had a better life in terms of a standard of a living that we do, even though we have access to the internet, better transportation, accessibility to information, better jobs. There's a lot of suffering in Kenya. And that's why I'm doing this. Now, for those who have never heard of me or heard me talk or do anything like this in the past, I'm not here to attack the current government. I'm not here to attack Ruto, Gachagua. Let others do that. I'm here to explain things, why things are the way they are, and what we can do to change them, and to educate and do what our government is not doing and our politicians are not doing, other than dancing on stage and do theatrical things that don't help anybody. I'm here to give Kenyans, especially the young ones, people my age and younger, what I call civic education. And to understand the laws that they need to sustain their country for the near future. Because if we don't, we're going to have a failed state, a banana republic, and we're going to have anarchy, which I don't think anybody wants. Well, I hope nobody wants anarchy. So follow me here as I break down these issues, these items. And of course, I have to start with the hot topic that's on the plate, that's on the table, and that's the finance bill, the budget, Kenyan debt, the overpopulation that we have in our cities, the taxation that seems to be sucking away entrepreneurship, proprietorship, they're sucking away the life from the young people of our great country. And when I say great, I'm talking about you, the people. Because you have the power more than anybody might, want to let you believe. You have the power. The Constitution gives you that right. And it's kind of ironic, by the end of this video, I'm going to say something that basically flips on what I'm saying now pertaining to our Constitution. It might come to some people's surprise that maybe our major problem is the very same Constitution that gives us these rights for people to assemble, protest, vote, speak out. The same Constitution that has been championed to be the most progressive constitution in Africa, let alone East Africa. A constitution that mirrors, resembles, reflects the American Constitution is maybe our own predicament and our biggest problem. So much with the introduction. Without further ado, let me tell you what I'm just thinking about loud today. So follow me here. Now, last year, when the campaigns were at their best, where people were, engaged, I told a few folks, this is something I knew in the past. While Uhuru was still the president, I told a few folks, friends of mine, people who are in politics, different analysts out there, I told them, my friend, listen, the next president in Kenya is going to have the toughest job than any other Kenyan president has in the past. The next president in Kenya is going to suffer some stress while in office. The next president might even be removed by the same Kenyans who elected him. Regardless if it was Raila, Ruto, or Jakoya, I told them this is the thing. Kenya is heading a really bad direction pertaining to a few things. Number one, we are in serious debt. And anybody has been in debt, they know how debt can eat you up and you feel like a slave. Debt. And this debt is in dollars. Kenya doesn't export enough to get enough dollars. Kenya is relying on other Kenyans who live in other parts of the world, especially America, to send dollars back so they have, dollars in the country. And why do you need dollars? You need dollars to buy oil. You need dollars to buy commodities from other countries. Kenya is a net importer. We import almost everything, including clothes, mitumba, even new clothes, cars, luxury items. We import. But we're not exporting. We're not producing as much as we're supposed to. And even seriously, what's more sad is the fact that we have the capacity to do these things, but we're not. Are we lazy? Are we just too corrupt? Are we just not smart enough? Are we not intelligent? Kenya has the most intelligent people in Africa, just like Nigeria. But most smart people, intelligent people, they go to overseas. They go to America, they go to Australia, New Zealand, Brazil, Canada, UK. They leave the country. And we are left with a few folks who think they're so smart and they can give us lessons on how to build a country by having a useless hustler intelligence bureau. People like that spreading propaganda nonsense on social media. So the first thing that I told my friend is, the reason I'm saying that is not because I'm wishing bad for my country. No, some people might take it the wrong way. No, I'm seriously thinking the next president, which now we have a current president, the hustler, might be removed in office prematurely. And even if he does stay in office, he most likely might get voted out. So these are serious things. You saw what happened in Sri Lanka. You see what's happening in Ghana. Countries are, under serious debt. People cannot get medicine. They cannot buy food. They cannot buy fuel. What do? They go to the streets, and who do they blame? They blame the government. They blame the president. They blame the people in the cabinet. They blame their members of parliament. They blame the elected officials, and they take them out. It's a sad state of affairs. I don't want to imagine it, and I don't want you to think that I'm being pessimistic here. I'm just saying the obvious. I said this before the election. Now, in 2014, I was talking to my father, and I told him this. It's seriously not looking well for Kenya. This is in 2014. I was seeing the kind of debt the Jubilee government was, basically mounting. They're borrowing here, left, China here, loan, Eurobond here, loan, another loan here, another loan there. Now they're frustrated because now other countries are not giving Kenya any loans. Now they went back to local banks, borrowing from banks at high interest rates. When that happens, when they go to banks to borrow money, they're basically taking that from the private sector, from the individual, which is you. You don't have the capacity to go to a bank because a bank is like, why would I give this person a loan at 5, 6, 7%? And the government is paying 20% and above. They'll give the government the money. And the banks in Kenya are the only people who are making exorbitant amount of profit. Look at Equity Bank is doing well. They're conquering East Africa and Central Africa. Now they're planning to go South Africa. The banks are doing well. So if you have shares in banks, good for you. But most Kenyans are stranded because now they can't get access to loans. They can't start businesses. Their businesses are collapsing. Kenyans' businesses are shutting down. And even worse, now with the increase in electricity prices, fuel costs, entrepreneurs, investors are like, there's no need for me to invest in Kenya. I'll go to Ethiopia. I'll go to Rwanda. Nah, I'll put my money in Europe or in America, where it's safe and there's a high chance of a great return rate. So this is back in 2014 that I was seeing these things. And the more these things got worse, the more I saw that Kenyans are getting more apathetic about the politics, and they're just frustrated. They're just mad. They're just angry. And therefore, when the opposition, Mr. Raila Odinga calls for a protest, you see thousands and thousands of people on the streets because most of them don't have any jobs and they're frustrated and they want to, they want to channel their frustrations at someone or to someone, and that's the current president. So that's where we are. And for those who can see what's going to happen next, can see that it's not going to look good if this finance bill and this budget doesn't really work, and it frustrates Kenyans. Business shut down. People are forced to move to the villages. People are forced to shut down their businesses. People are forced to stop spending, which results in more businesses shutting down, restaurants closing, less taxes. Then the whole thing collapses, and then what are you left with? You're left with people in the streets, my dear friend. So the number one thing is this. The debt is a serious thing. Jimmy Wanjigi has been talking about it. I am not a psychophone for Jimmy Wanjigi because Jimmy Wanjigi is the person who gave us Uhuru Ruto. Jimmy Wanjigi is one of the kind of folks who did business with government and made millions and billions of shillings. So I don't really rely on him, and I don't expect him to be the whistleblower or the Joshua of a revolution in Kenya. But he's making a solid, concise, mature, sober point, which is we're paying for these loans. We don't see the development. These are obvious things. Where did the money go? And what are we paying for? Can we get an audit? Can we get the parliament to do their job? Increasing the VAT on fuel will only cause a domino effect. Essentially, causing everything else to rise in prices. That's basic. Even a child can see that. You increase VAT in fuel. Now, you might want to ask yourself, why is the government doing this? Why? It sounds like a stupid thing to do, right? It's like silly, like, oh, this is dumb. Why would you increase, VAT on fuel? The president actually, when he was debating by himself last year, Raila didn't show up for the debate. He was asked which taxes would you remove from fuel? And he mentioned, he didn't have a good answer. That's obvious. You could go back and watch his answer. But he stumbled a little bit and he came to VAT. He was in government, by the way, when this VAT was being introduced. He was in Jubilee. They passed this thing in Parliament. It was 8% fuel VAT. But he said he will remove the VAT. But okay, so what changed? He got into office and now instead of removing it, they doubled it. Is that hypocrisy? Is that irony? I don't know. It's both. I don't know. Did they lie? I don't know. But it's quite clear the president got into office and he saw the debt. He saw there's no money. Money comes in, goes out. The country doesn't have enough money to pay loans and also pay its government employees and civil servants and take care of Kenyans in terms of refunding or remitting NHIF. So something is wrong somewhere. But why do you think they increase the VAT tax on fuel? Because fuel is the only commodity in Kenya, the only commodity that you can increase taxes on and get 100% return. It's easy to follow because they know how many tons of oil they import, and they can know how much money they can have every single month. So that's the best bet for the government to know at least every single month we're going to have this amount of money from these taxes on fuel. They know that. And that's borderline a flat tax that every single Kenyan, poor, rich, small, old, in the rural area, in the urban area, is going to pay. So it makes it equal in that aspect. People are going to pay this tax. But the border riders, personal vehicles, anybody who does any business in Kenya is going to end up paying this VAT, 16%. It's a huge amount in terms of taxes. But that's where the government depends on money. The problem is when you do that, you basically increase the prices of all other commodities because that affects transportation, it affects the production of electricity, it affects every single sector: tourism, agriculture, education. It affects everybody. It affects even the small child in the rural area gets affected by this fuel tax. So when other commodities rise, that means Kenyans have to pay more from their pocket. And it's quite logical for you to think that when people are paying too much for food, for fuel, electricity, they're going to start cutting costs in some shape, form, or fashion. Last year, same thing last year, and I'm sorry, I keep on mentioning last year because I had a different channel. I had different interviews I was doing I took them down. So when I refer to last year, hopefully there's some videos out there you guys can go look for. But when I say last year, I remember, this is last year or 2 years ago, I remember telling a friend of mine, the same friend I was telling, I talk politics a lot, and this guy, some of them are in government, telling them, my friend, do you know what's going to happen when this fuel keeps on increasing every other quarter? People are going to stop driving. So the kind of congestion you see is in the city is going to decrease. And I keep on referring to the city because Nairobi is the best gauge on how economy, our country, the direction the country is going. It is. So you see people driving less. You see less cars on the roads. That means there's less money the government is getting. So it's a retrogressive tax. It affects the people negatively, retrogressively. And also the government gets less money, less taxes because people stop spending. They cut cost. If you are planning to drive to Mombasa for a vacation, if you're planning to go somewhere for leisure, you cut it. You do other things with your money, like buy food. And therefore restaurants, now the restaurants haven't really recovered in Kenya after COVID. They get affected because people stop spending. People stop going out. Now you have to be a person who earns a certain amount of money to be able to enjoy the luxury that Kenya offers. So that's the thing with fuel. Now, if somebody asks you, if you are in government, what would you do with pertaining to the fuel tax? Every Kenyan is crying, you are killing us. Please, reduce these taxes on fuel. It's affecting us. The Uhuru government actually has subsidies on fuel. It had subsidies on food. And of course, the president is right. Those are not sustainable measures to curb the growing cost of living because the whole world is being affected by inflation. That's true. But to go ahead and increase and double a VAT tax on fuel is not really smart. And like I said, by the end of this video, I'm going to offer my solutions. Because I don't think this government, sad to say, is really looking on solving this problem the right way. It's avoiding solving the problem and it's looking on a shortcut on solving the problem, which is a major problem. They're just kicking the can down the road and it's going to affect Kenyans more than they think. They have no plans and they are defeated. Clearly. Don't put your head in the sand if you're in opposition, if you support Raila, if you support Martha Karua, if you support Kalonzo. And I'm not a sycophant for any of these folks. I do declare I did support them, but I'm not going to be biased on facts because I'm not a partisan. I'm somebody who wants the best for Kenya. So for them walking out clearly shows that they have no strategies. Like I said, if I was in parliament, I would sit there and listen to the budget being read and disagree with what I disagree and let my disagreement be heard. No, they walked out and they went outside and they looked discombobulated, my friend. It was so sad. They're saying these things. Why don't you set up your own sit down within Parliament actually and speak within Parliament and say these things in Parliament. Otherwise, you're just telling us that you are defeated. You don't know you have amuna mwelekeo, which is kind of sad. It's sad to witness. Opiyo Wandayi is doing a terrible job, my friend. They need better leadership. I think the only person in the opposition that's doing an awesome job, you see me on media, you see me on social media, you see me on TV, you see me on the Senate, is Edwin Sifuna, which I hope very soon he'll be running for president. Other than him, I don't know. They cannot debate. They are full of theatrics. They abscond on their duties, and they stage a juvenile, immature walkout. A walkout. I remember during COVID, when anybody was mad, especially young men or students in schools, they banned something. They banned their dorms. Churches were being banned when there were protests. Ban. When protests were happening, ban tires on the road. Ban. When there was this awful display at Northlands when they invaded the Kenyatta family farm, they banned the farm. Walking out is the same thing as ban. There's some decorum you expect from our members of parliament. How they speak, what they say, what they talk about, how they act. They're called honorable for a reason. Staging a walkout is not honorable. It's weak. And it was sad to see. Now I do hope that the leadership of the opposition starts planning on strategies, because it looks like Kenya Kwanza, UDA, is doing a great job pertaining to strategizing, planning, and having a resolution. You might say that they need to have one because they're in government. Yes. But remember, the elected members of parliament, regardless if they're in the opposition or in the ruling party, every single one of them needs to have ideas, resolve, and resolutions. They could offer amendments within the parliament pertaining to the finance bill. They could tell Kenya what they disagree, what they agree about, and they could stage a sit down with their own constituents and explain to them in a clear, concise fashion what they agree with and what they don't agree with, and play politics the way it's supposed to be played. Smart. If you play stupid politics and you stage walkouts, you're just going to show you're weak and you're going to be defeated over and over and over again. Now, luckily for the opposition is that this finance bill is not a great bill. It has full of holes. It has a high chance of failing than succeeding. And therefore, at the end of the day, they'll win by default. If this bill ends up being a disaster, like I think it's going to be. I might be wrong, and I wish I'm wrong. I hope it succeeds, but from what I'm seeing, the opposition will be lucky enough, because this bill, if it does what it's intended to do to the letter, it's going to end up being a disaster for Kenyans and a disaster for the ruling party, UDA. And I think that's maybe that's what they're banking on. But before then, the country will have suffered. Kenyans will have been left frustrated because they are members of parliament who are representatives who are supposed to represent them. Instead of representing them in parliament, they're walking out. So what is the common Kenyan supposed to do if you guys are walking out of parliament? Come on, let's be serious, my dear friend. It's ridiculous. Do you think the person who lives in Nakuru or Olkalau or Nyahururu, the person who lives in Samburu, the person who lives in Narok, pays the same tax as the person who lives in Nairobi? The employed person who lives in Nairobi? Of course not. We don't have a fair tax. There are people who are enjoying the gifts that Uhuru gave them pertaining to the roads, the infrastructure, the electricity. They're enjoying this and they don't pay any taxes. Absolutely nothing. There are Kenyans who are outside the taxable income, but they make other sources of income and they don't pay taxes. But the teacher, the doctor who's employed by the government, the corporations that are within the country and their employees, the police officer, they pay the taxes. The burden is on them because they have a pay slip. But there are Kenyans who are selling milk, they're selling commodities, and they're not being taxed. So we don't have a fair tax. That's something that you would think will be one of the key items this Kenya Kwanza government will be talking about. How can they have that Juakali person pay taxes instead of increasing fuel tax? Because fuel tax is just going to be retrogressive. Right? Does that make sense to you? There are Kenyans who are not paying their fair share. That's obvious. There are Kenyans who are carrying the burden for others, and they're still enjoying the fruits of this brick and mortar that Uhuru gave Kenyans. Now, I don't really want to attack politicians here. It's not my job. But the likes of Didi Nyoro, they went around telling Kenyans, oh, the high cost of living is because of the handshake, nonsense after nonsense after nonsense. That's what Yuda ran on. And now they're telling us it's because of Ukraine, Russia. And they just lied. I don't like that kind of politics. I know it's politics. It's fair, in politics, dirty politics, good politics, kitchen sink politics is still politics. I understand that's the game, but that's not my kind of politics. I want to talk about policies in a respectable fashion because we're grown-ups here. We're not children. I would think somebody in the government will say, okay, let's calm down. Let's see how we can have the Juakali person engage in terms of economy and them paying their fair share. Let's have this person pay for their retirement. Let's have this person be part of the taxable economy. Why is that the case? Because most Kenyans are not planning for the retirement. And sometimes you need the government to sustain these people when they reach 60s, 70s, 80s. Because there comes a time that we can't really walk, especially when you're at your old age, especially women. And people, if they don't have, the United States, and I really hate comparing the United States to Kenya, they have a social security program. When you retire at a certain age, you get a certain amount of money every month, pertaining to how much you put in and pertaining to how much your income was. I think it's about $1,000, $1,200, $1,600, something of that range. That can enable you to pay your rent and buy your medicine and buy some food. So that's things that I was hoping that this finance bill, this budget will address. It's not. But what saddens me the most is that we do have a lot of people with ideas, but they're not in government. They're not in the National Assembly. They're not in the cabinet. They're in the private sector or they're overseas. The government needs to poach these people and bring them into government. And listen to them. Listen to these business owners. Engage them. Instead of thinking about taxing the rich, engage the rich and see, because they know the economy very well. They've engaged with the economy for years after years after years. Increasing taxes to them, you know what they're going to do? They're going to pout and they're going to walk away. So follow me while I discuss this in detail in terms of solutions, policies that can help our country. Because what I've witnessed and what I see every single day is that we have so many Kenyans complaining, saying how this budget is awful, saying, things that, you feel sorry for them because they say the same things, and they say things like this. Let me play for you a video, a montage of Kenyans complaining. These are the things they're saying. Listen.
So mimi hakuna kitu natarajia kizuri kwa hii serikali. Naona tu wametumaliza.
Tumeteseka ya kutosha, sababu ile 200 tulikuwa tunaweka zamani, una shida nao ukifuruga mchana mzima ndio at least upate kitu. Saa hii ukiweka ni kama hata uwezi jua ni kitu gani inaendelea, sababu unaenda hata kwa pampa tena nakwambia hakuna 50.
Hata wakati ile kulikuwa na kiangazi tulikuwa tu tunakula. Kwa hivyo si Ruto atakuja na unga ama ule mwingine atakuja kitu. Ni vile wananchi wavumilie na wangojee vile budget itasomwa, kwa sababu hata yeye hana pesa yake, atatoa kwa mfuko ajenge Kenya. Kenya vile iko ni watu wote wavumilie.
Sitarajii mambo mingi sana, lakini yenye itakuja tu kidogo tofauti, yenye italeta tu mabadiliko kwetu, tutaikubali. Lakini vile tu mambo iko, kwanza iendelee hivyo mpaka mambo iwe.
Hiyo watatumaliza. Mimi ni kuisha naisha. Hii pikipiki yangu nasukumaga, nikienda trip moja hivyo, nikirudi inakatia mafuta kwa mlima. Ninasukuma 3 times in a day. Hata niko karibu kukufa. Siko mimi. Ukiniona hapa, mimi kile kidogo nafanyia inaishia kwa barabara juu ya mafuta. Kwa hivyo mimi naambia serikali, mambo ya mafuta muangalie hiyo itatumaliza.
Because of commodities in the market going up, I'm also forced to also add certain amount of shillings on top of what I sell. And with that, I feel like sometimes I'm also losing people. It's been hard on every one of us.
Mambo na mafuta kuongezwa bei, mambo itakuwa mbaya kabisa. Juu hata saa hii tuko hali mbaya. Mafuta ikiongezwa ni kumaanisha kila kitu itapandishwa.
Definitely the cost of doing business is definitely will go up because of the rise of fuel prices, because fuel dictates all the prices in terms of the cost of production, and once the manufacturers incur another cost, they will also extend it to the consumer. So definitely the cost of doing business is definitely going to go up if the cost of fuel goes up.
It is going to businesses in a huge way because it's fuel increases almost all prices of all commodities. So for our businesses, it's going to be a bit hard, and we hope that there could be another way that we can address this issue of adding the VAT.
Sasa vile tungetaka ni wananchi watulie na waombe Mungu kukue na mvua ndio mahindi ipatikane.
You can hear the frustration in these people's voices, and most of them mention fuel, just like I did earlier. But you don't hear them talking about other solutions. They expect government to come with solutions, which is fine. It's fine. Where is the opposition? Why are they talking about their solutions? And when you have people talking like this, actually saying the obvious things, that businesses' costs are going to be, expensive, businesses might be shutting down, X, Y, and Z. Where are we having a sitting in every constituency where people can talk to their elected officials? And that's why I say, why do we have a National Assembly if it doesn't know its role, and it seems like the executive is basically twisting and manipulating what goes on in the National Assembly? The National Assembly is supposed to be holding the executive in check. That's not the case. The opposition is supposed to be holding the ruling administration, the ruling government in check. They're confused. Who's going to fight for the Kenyan? And who's going to talk about policies and solutions? That's why I'm doing what I'm doing here. And the key item that I've talked about is the fact that we don't have manufacturing. We have a bloated government. And we have a constitution that we cannot afford. So follow me here as I break down these items piece by piece as we go on. I'd like to welcome you to Just Thinking Aloud. I go by the name of Vincent Kambona. Feel free to like, subscribe, share. And I'm hoping to engage you in conversation and debate about our current country going forward. I wish you well. I'll see you next time. Cheers.